Next on Arizona 360, discussing an uncertain future for DACA recipients.
It affects their daily lives. It causes depression. It causes constant fear.
Plus, what's often left out of the conversation about immigration.
My deputies recover about 150 bodies a year.
And a post on Facebook protesting teacher pay in Arizona sends a message seen nationwide.
We don't go into teaching for the money. However, we should still be able to live.
Hello and welcome to Arizona 360. Thank you for joining us. I'm Lorraine Rivera here at Arizona Public Media as we debut a new set. This week we examine two national issues Arizonans are debating: immigration and teacher pay. On the topic of immigration, we turn to a panel of guests who know the issue from a few different angles. We'll begin with Rafael Carranza from the Arizona Republic, Patricia Mejia, an immigration attorney, and Sheriff Mark Napier from here in Pima County. My thanks to all of you for being here. Let's begin with you, Patricia. We're talking about DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. We heard a lot about it over the last few months, and suddenly it's sort of stopped. Where is it now?
Well, it's up to Congress really to decide what's going to happen with it. There was a March 5th deadline. That's when DACA was supposed to expire. It's stuck in the courts. There were a few decisions. There was an injunction against the ending of the program, 2 injunctions. And so right now it remains open, but with an uncertain future.
Rafael, you've been covering the border for a few years now. Fair to say lives are in limbo when we don't know what to expect for these cases?
Yeah, and what's interesting about that is that we saw DACA kind of being used as a bartering tool, kind of tit for tat. We give you this, you give me that during the negotiations, which ultimately stalled. And what we saw with the passage of the latest omnibus spending bill is that one of the key provisions that the Trump administration was asking for, which is more money for border security, they approved money for that. But what they were asking for in exchange, the protections for Dreamers, was completely left out.
Sheriff, when we talk about federal funding, your office has sort of been in the hot seat recently over some of the federal funding that you see. Where is that now, and how does the Pima County Sheriff's Department move on without federal dollars to support border work?
Well, our federal grant, our Stone Garden grant, was approved conditionally, and we responded to some concerns that the community had, which I think were valid. And I thought the political process actually worked. We were disappointed it was initially turned down, but the remediation process to reconsider that actually was positive. So we spoke to the ACLU and other interested parties and said, what could we do to alleviate some of your concerns? And we've done those things. So we've got our Stone Garden funding back, and we still have issues with SCAP funding, which has diminished significantly over the last 10 years. And so we still have a tremendous responsibility with respect to public safety in Pima County regarding the border. We have a 125-mile linear exposure to the international border. A good portion of that is on the Tohono Reservation. And a lot of that is exceptionally rural. What irritates me are politicians that go to a port of entry and have a photo op and say they've been to the border. That's not the border. That's not the front line of where we're having the most difficulties.
What percentage of your work would you say is border related?
Well, it's difficult to quantify that because there are so many nuances to that issue. I would say 20% is probably not missing it too far, that has some relationship to the border in some manner. A lot of public safety concerns come up through the border, whether it be human trafficking, drug trafficking, or other transnational crime threats. And what we don't talk about enough, which is a major factor for us, is the human rights tragedy. My deputies recover about 150 bodies a year in the deserts of western Pima County, and those are only the bodies we recover. No one will ever know how many people are out there.
Patricia, have the numbers changed very much over the years? You've been doing this more than 10 years now, where there was a hot time,
Yes.
back in 2005, 2008. Has it tapered down since then?
I believe so. In the last few years, we've seen a decline. But like the sheriff said, it could be that people are just not found. They have to find different routes to be able to cross. So they tend to cross now through more remote areas. So they could be dying at the same rate. We just do not recover the bodies.
And Rafael, for a long time, Arizona was sort of ground zero. And from what I understand, looking at the numbers, it still is in certain respects. How does it compare with other states though in the Southwest?
When it comes to the deaths of border migrants, Arizona is still very much, one of the hot spots, I guess, so to speak, especially in the areas of western Pima County, the area near Ajo, those desert areas. However, we've seen the traffic of people kind of switching it up. It's now moving more towards Texas, and as a result, we've seen a lot more of those border deaths happening in Texas as well. There was a report that just came out a few weeks ago from the International Organization for Migration. They tracked the number of deaths all along the U.S.-Mexico border, and they found that Texas had the largest number of deaths, and a lot of them were concentrated in South Texas in particular. But Arizona is still very much a deadly corridor for this type of trafficking and for deaths along the border.
And we're seeing an increase in OTMs other than Mexicans. A lot of traffic coming up from El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, because of the desperation of the people, especially in El Salvador with the rise of MS-13 taking hold in El Salvador, is people are making very desperate decisions. And while we can all agree that people should follow the law and all of that, people are in a state of desperation that many of us might make similar decisions to protect our families, to provide a better life for our families, or to get our families out of these very desperate situations. And what really pulls at my heartstrings is some of these people begin to walk north, and 2 or 3 years later, my deputies might find a skull and a leg bone, and their families will never know, and will never know who that was or what happened to that person. And this is a human rights tragedy. I mean, I really speak strongly about that every time I have an opportunity to speak to border issues, because I don't think we talk enough about that.
One of the key criticisms about the government is that the strategy that's being used at this point, the government for the past decade or so has built stronger physical barriers in a lot of the more transited areas. It's still a process that's underway, especially in South Texas now. We're seeing a lot of these high priority areas where they're building more fencing and more infrastructure. Critics say that that's ultimately just pushing migrants more towards these dangerous routes and causing more deaths. And what we've seen over the past few years is that the number of apprehensions or people trying to cross the border illegally has gone down drastically, but the number of deaths has remained steady or slightly increased.
Patricia, you've been working with these families for many years now. What do you think needs to happen to as the sheriff and Rafael are both saying, to change the course of the conversation?
Well, I think there needs to be a nationwide dialogue about immigration and where do we stand as people, as this country. Like, do we welcome new people, and what process do we need to use to welcome these people who are already here? As we know, there are at least 21 million people who are here undocumented. So do we just ignore them? Do we create a program? What does this program look like? So we need to come up with a solution. I think a program that starts with employment authorization for a few years, similar to DACA, I suppose, and then eventually people maybe would need to be tested to become permanent residents. They need to be vetted for criminal activity and all that, and then eventually hopefully become citizens. But I think it's cruel and unrealistic to just ignore millions of people in the country, and they go in the shadows. They don't report crimes. They go underground. Some people are afraid to even go to the hospitals these days, and that's not. I don't believe that's who we want to be as a nation.
Sheriff, is that true? Have you found that people are hesitant to contact law enforcement because of their status?
Well, we don't know what we don't know is the problem. And I certainly, I've been a police officer for more than 30 years, and when I would go to a crime where a person was a victim of crime, I didn't ask about immigration status. It's irrelevant to their victimization. And I hope that my deputies will follow suit in that it's not part of what we're investigating. It's not part of our mandate to adopt federal immigration responsibilities.
It's something that's fundamentally got to be addressed.
Sanctuary cities are dangerous, and we're going to take care of the problem. Thank you all.
Sanctuary cities is something we've heard a lot about. Do we have designated sanctuary cities in Arizona or places that resemble such?
The hard part about that is defining what a sanctuary city is, simply because there's no clear one definition of what that entails. I mean, there's sort of these agreed standards of what it could be, and it generally seems to be, they're limiting their cooperation with federal authorities when it comes to immigration. I don't know that any Arizona cities itself would fall under sanctuary cities, which is why we haven't really seen a lot of that focus about that debate here in the state. It usually falls on states like California. A lot of the cities there, they've approved a lot of legislation towards that regard, but we haven't seen that play out here in our state.
Sheriff, it's risky to designate as a sanctuary city. I mean, there are actual dollars that are associated with that title.
There are. The federal government has decided that it would potentially withhold burn jag grant money, which a lot of law enforcement agencies live on. I have a philosophical problem with sanctuary cities in that there are 3 branches of government: a branch that enforces laws, a branch that interprets laws, and a branch that makes laws. And I really don't think we want law enforcement leaders deciding which laws to follow and which laws don't. I think it's a slippery slope. And even as a law enforcement executive, I'm not comfortable with empowering law enforcement to say, I like this law, but I don't like this law. I'll follow this law, but not that law. I really think that we need to keep that separate. And do laws need to be changed? I think thoughtful discourse would say that probably we do need to make some modifications.
I agree with the sheriff that there has to be discourse, and we need to address this issue sooner or later. And I agree that, I mean, it is difficult from his perspective to say we're going to ignore some laws. We want to act from heart, we want to protect people, but at the same time, you get to decide which ones do you ignore, which ones do you enforce.
What are you hearing from people that you cover these stories with? What are some of their big concerns right now?
I think just the biggest concern for a lot of the DACA recipients is obviously their future and what it means. Obviously, the fact that they have DACA gives them a permit to work, so they're able to legally contribute to the economy. There's also a lot of questions when it comes to what's going to happen to the information that the government already has about the DACA recipients. Obviously, they had to apply, provide their address and all these information so that they could qualify. And so now that the government has that, what's going to happen to that info? What we've heard from the Trump administration is that they're not going to share that info for enforcement purposes.
Sheriff, this political uncertainty that we're in right now, how does that affect your work as a law enforcement agent?
Well, there's a lot of rhetoric flying around, and so we really don't know where public policy will land. So it's a moving target for law enforcement. There's a lot of talk about creating barriers on our southern border. I think that the terminology, the wall, gets in the way of solutions. I'm a proponent of securing the border because it is a public safety issue. It's a national security issue, but ultimately it's a human rights issue. Because we are channeling people into very dangerous environments and people are losing their lives, and that's a human rights issue. I think it's really incumbent upon, especially larger agency CEOs like myself, to be engaged in Washington, D.C. and to help guide public policy. I've been in Washington, D.C. in the last month twice, interacting with senators and policymakers because they have to hear from us.
And you mentioned that earlier, that a politician comes down for a quick photo op and they leave, but here we are always in the border and we understand these issues. I want to wrap this up with sort of your final thoughts on what you think needs to happen to take this conversation to the next level. Rafael, we'll start with you.
I'd have to add saying that I think right now there seems to be very little appetite to address these issues. We're aware that there was a sense of urgency when there was a sort of deadline imposed when it came to March 5th and whatnot, but that's sort of fizzled out, and Congress seems very reticent at this time to try to retake that. I don't see something moving along very fast until, say, maybe in September or so, when the next round of funding comes to light again, or if we hear something that's decided in court.
Okay, Patricia, time is no longer of the essence?
No, it doesn't look like it is. And I would say it's important to keep in mind what is at stake here for members of our community. I think there are many, many families here who live in fear, who are afraid sometimes to drive to the store to just even buy groceries. There are people who don't know if they should enroll in school for the next semester. I mean, this affects people deeply. It affects their daily lives. It causes depression. It causes constant fear. So we need to, sooner or later, we're going to have to confront this issue. Sooner or later, hopefully by September, hopefully by the end of the year, at some moment in time, we're going to come to face with it and have to just make difficult decisions. And I hope that day comes soon, because these people need resolution. They need to know where they stand. Are they going to stay or are they going to go? And what happens next? It's too difficult to live with such uncertainty on a daily level.
Sheriff, you're in law enforcement, but you're also in the political world now. Mm-hmm. Is there a will to do this?
I've been in this area for more than 30 years, and I keep seeing the can kicked down the road. I hear heated rhetoric, sound bites, but what I don't hear is good public policy discussion. This is not a Democrat or Republican issue. There's enough blame to go around. And it's time to fix this. It's time to remove the uncertainty from so many people that live in this country and have made a life in this country.
We have to remember that this is an election year. Midterm elections are at stake in November. And so since it is such a polarizing issue that's going to alienate people one way or another, it's very sensitive, and no politician that's up for re-election is going to want to touch this.
Well, and Raphael's correct, because if you're in the center, you get hit in both cheeks. And that's a problem. I tend to be pretty centrist on this stuff. I'm about what's good public policy, so people on the far right are angry with me and people on the far left are mad at me, so you get hit from both sides. But that's what people elected me to be the sheriff of this county to do, is to try to follow my conscience, my education, and my experience to guide good public policy.
This week in Arizona, a group of teachers demonstrated at the state capitol with demands for the governor and state lawmakers. Among them, a 20% raise for teachers. This on the heels of the legislature extending a $500 million funding stream every year through 2041. It comes by way of a sales tax known as Prop 301. Governor Ducey signed off on the legislation early this week to extend the tax, which was set to expire in 2021. In 2000, voters approved the sales tax. It's 0.6 of a cent on every dollar spent. It would have been up for a vote on renewing it in 2020. At least one educator in Arizona thinks the legislature could do more to boost teacher pay. She used her own salary as an example of the issue, and her post went viral on Facebook. We visited Elizabeth Millich's classroom in Phoenix to get her story.
It's a biographical poem. Who can tell me what that word biographical means?
For teaching second grade at Whispering Wind Academy, Elizabeth Millich earns $35,000 a year.
And you are going to write a biographical poem about you.
A district letter recently informed her about a 0.4% raise, or $131 extra a year, for completing professional development courses. The letter arrived the same day she paid out of pocket to resupply her class with Scotch tape.
And so it was just kind of this perfect storm of like, this is why I'm red for ed. This is why teachers should be paid more and respected, because not only are we buying our own supplies, but our salary is laughable and our raises are laughable. And so I just not even thinking, just sort of snapped a picture of it and put it on Facebook, not thinking that it would have the effect that it has had.
The post included an image of her pay and said without her husband's income, Millich couldn't afford to teach in Arizona. After deductions, she earns about $640 every 2 weeks. The pay stub went viral with hundreds of shares and comments, and it made headlines nationwide.
I honestly could never have anticipated that it would have that type of response. But again, I think it really put a picture to the fact that teachers are underpaid.
Her message garnered plenty of praise and then criticism. So much so, this teacher of nearly 10 years deleted the post.
The best comment is, you knew what you were getting into when you went into this career, so you shouldn't be complaining. And I'm just thinking, that's crazy though, because yes, we don't go into teaching for the money. Absolutely we don't. However, we should still be able to live. We should still be able to have a livable wage.
On the heels of a successful teacher strike in West Virginia, teachers in Arizona have rallied around the Red for Ed campaign for better pay. Millich says she hopes they can avoid a strike.
I hope that our state doesn't take that long to realize that a change needs to happen. It would be so sad to me if teachers had to vacate classrooms to be heard.
This bill does avert a crisis. It eliminates the cliff.
Millich says she's grateful lawmakers extended Prop 301, but is concerned that it only maintains existing funds and doesn't pump new dollars into schools. And she disputes a report from the Arizona Auditor General that the average salary for teachers rose more than 4% in a year, from $46,000 to $48,000.
That is not a true statement. In terms of, I do not know any teachers that have received a 4.4% raise.
While school boards determine teacher salaries, Millich is quick to defend her district, the Paradise Valley Unified School District.
I feel very fortunate. I work for one of the best districts in Phoenix. And I think that's the thing also, you know, it's not a district issue. It is a state issue that funding is not being allocated in the right way and then given to the districts to distribute to teachers. I like eating chocolate and warm bubble baths. Is that true? Yeah, that's gonna be a true story for me. If it means raising taxes, if it means legalizing marijuana and taxing it and allocating 80% of that money into education, whatever needs to be done, I am just hopeful that there's a solution. I'm not in politics, so I don't know what the solution is, but I know that 49 other states pay more for their teachers, so what are they doing that's different than this state?
And for a deeper understanding of education funding and how it makes its way into the classroom, I'm joined by Diane Douglas, Superintendent of Public Instruction. She joins us from Phoenix. Diane, thanks for being here. 301 monies, for a lot of people who aren't fully in tune with education money, they might think that this is new. It's really a continuation, and some critics have already said this is really status quo. Do you see it that way?
Well, it is. It's an extension we needed for what was Prop 301 from 2000, which would sunset in just a couple of years. And it's a very important part of our funding to get salary money to our teachers. So, yes, it is an extension, but it was a very needed one, because without that, I can't even imagine the fiscal cliff that our districts would fall off, not just for teacher salaries, but in other areas too.
Does this somehow mean that teachers might see more money in their pocketbooks coming up in the next year or two?
The way the Prop 301 lays out maintains the status quo. With it now being legislative, there might be opportunities, because about 56% of the Prop 301 money goes to teacher salaries, and to teacher salaries possibly through other means, through the district's M&O. But there's other education funding that also comes from that. And that's a discussion for the legislature.
If there were suddenly an infusion of cash into the classroom, would that change teacher morale or student performance?
Clearly, it's not the money that makes our teachers dedicated. They're there because they have a love of children, they have the love of whatever subject it is that they teach. But certainly, I think it can help them in many other ways. If you're worrying about, are your kids going to have lunch today? As a teacher, do your own children have to be on free and reduced? How are you going to pay the mortgage? Gee, I have to have a second job to make ends meet because my profession doesn't pay me enough. Well, that takes energy away from what they can do in the classroom each and every day also.
Last week, the governor laid out some plans that really target improving the safety of a school. Thoughts on what your position is with how we improve things here in Arizona?
I've talked about kind of a three-step plan, if you will. The first thing we need to do, in my opinion, is make sure our facilities are safe. And what I mean by that is, one simple thing we can do is make sure that all our schools, and each school in every district can be at a little bit different place, but make sure there's perimeter fencing that controls the access in and out of the schools. Another big piece of it is school resource officers. Not all our schools have those. And the last piece that I think we learned from what happened in Florida, that we also have to take the mental health issues of not just students, but of adults very seriously. And how do we get our students to talk to us when they know there might be a problem or a potential problem on a campus? And how do we make sure that the adults take the right steps and have the resources to take the right steps? Our counselor ratio here in Arizona is 850 to 1.
Point of clarification for what's written in the statute and what we practice here in Arizona. Can teachers be armed in classrooms, or is it specifically school resource officers and law enforcement?
Governing boards must create policies to restrict guns on campuses, except peace officers and as authorized by the school administrator. So technically, I believe, yes, a principal could say if you're trained to carry a firearm, if you get ongoing training, you could be authorized. I have to tell you, though, quite honestly, the way that statute is written, if I were a principal, I don't think I would do it without more direction from either the superintendent or the governing board. So I think it's a piece of statute that has some options to help protect students and keep campuses safer, but I think we have a little bit of work to do on it legislatively.
As a superintendent of public instruction here in the state, do you have a position on that statute?
I think we can explore it. I think we should definitely boost up school resource officers, absolutely. But again, that's a financial challenge for our struggling districts. Do you pay your teachers a little more, or do you pay for this resource? But if our children aren't feeling safe at school, or they feel that there's threats, they're not going to learn the way they should. So it's an issue we have to address and look through different options.
In some instances, the business community has stepped in to offer its support to public schools, including one of Southern Arizona's largest employers, Raytheon, which has taken a special interest in promoting STEM education. We learned more about that outreach from Vice President of Engineering, Laura McGill.
It's an outstanding teacher community we have here in the area, and we're very engaged in supporting them and giving them resources. But that's part of it, is we want to be there to help provide supplemental help, I guess, for the teachers. One of the programs that I'm very proud of is the Teachers in Industry program, where the teachers who are going through their master's degree in education spend a summer as an intern with us, and they learn how we apply science and technology to solve real life problems for the kinds of systems that we're developing.
How receptive has the education community been to having Raytheon come in and say, we want to help?
Yeah, I think we've been embraced with open arms, and it seems like they're willing to work with us. And we understand that the educational community has a lot of constraints. They have state standards that they have to meet, but they're willing to work with us to fit anything we can provide into the curriculum, and also to support some after-school programs.
Help me understand what that looks like when Raytheon does go to a school. I know you have like after-school programs, for example, at Desert View High School.
Yeah, Desert View High School, we have a program there to mentor especially young women, to get them interested in the sciences and to recognize that they could have a career in a STEM field. So we have about 20 volunteers who work with 100 students there to help provide, serve as mentors, but also role models for somebody they can see. We've seen in the research that having a positive role model can have one of the greatest impacts in a young person's life for them choosing a STEM career. We recognize that it's not just about investing and putting money into the schools. It's really about having a personal engagement with students. And that's why things like the math nights, where we bring 70 engineers into a classroom to help them solve their math problems, it's not just about the math that they have that night. It's about them sitting down with a positive role model, somebody who enjoys their job, loves math and science, loves talking about it, and that they could maybe see themselves as in just a few years.
Have you seen the fruits of your labor actually come to fruition? Are you turning out engineers?
We have. From this local community, we have definitely turned out engineers.
Is that part of the grand plan, the strategy behind this, that maybe we mentor these young people, they come back and they stay in this community and they serve it?
Yeah, that's a big part of it, because we definitely need to have that kind of talent in the local area. But it's also part of the bigger strategy for our country to be able to make sure that we're encouraging that we have good students that are interested in STEM, because the careers are outstanding, and we want them to be able to have the same opportunities that we've had.
Do you think that Raytheon has a responsibility to do this for this community, to always invest in education?
We do. Southern Arizona has invested in us. They've allowed us to expand our facilities as we need to for the growth that we're experiencing. And it's important for us to give back to the local community, and it's also to help have that population for our future employees as well.
And that's all for this week. If you have any feedback, send us an email, arizona360@azpm.org. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.